From New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Jammu and Kashmir's Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha speaks exclusively to DD India ahead of elections, says the Union Territory has transformed, its economy has doubled. World Health Organization clears Bavarian Nordic Mpox vaccine, becomes the first WHO-approved vaccine aimed at curbing Mpox. And NASA astronaut Sunita Williams, Butch Wilmore to address Earth from International Space Station. Space call set for 11:45 p.m. IST at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston. First news from the upcoming assembly elections to be held in the Indian Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Scrutiny of nominations will be held for the third phase of assembly polls in the North Indian Union Territory. The candidates can withdraw their nomination papers by or on before 17th of September. As many as 483 candidates have filed their nomination papers across 40 assembly constituencies of 7 districts of Jammu and Kashmir. Polling for the third phase will be held on 1st of October. While polling for the first and second polls will be held on September 18th and 25th. The first assembly elections post-abrogation of Article 370 is going to be significant after a decade. DD India correspondent Sakal Bhatt exclusively speaks with the Lieutenant Governor of Jammu and Kashmir, Manoj Sinha, on the upcoming assembly elections. Here's more.
We are very honoured to have with us this election season here in the Union Territory of Jammu Kashmir, Honourable Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha ji. Let's quickly understand the significance of these polls, sir, especially these polls coming after a long gap of a decade and first after the abrogation of Article 370. Your thoughts?
Yeah, naturally, people were waiting for this election, and the voter turnout in Lok Sabha election, Parliament election was huge, and I think in last 35 years, this number of voters never turned around for voting. I hope in this assembly election, this percentage will increase. Jammu Kashmir people have reposed their faith in democracy and democratic values. Again, they will elect a good government which can deliver development, peace, prosperity in Jammu and Kashmir.
How do you see the transition from terror to peace, from pelting to peace and development in the valley, from stagnation to stability?
A transformational change has occurred in the last 5 years, and I think people of Jammu and Kashmir has witnessed unprecedented development, tourism and peace. Prosperity also. The economy has just doubled in the last 4 or 5 years. Jammu Kashmir Bank is a testament. When I reached here, it was in loss of approximately 1100 crore. Now it's in profit of more than 1700 crore. The NPA was approximately 11%. Now it has reduced to 3.9%. Industrial investment is rising. Tourist influx has increased manifold. Agriculture and horticulture sector is taking a boom. And I think tourism has cut to size. And I am very sure that one day, very soon, people will realize that Jammu Kashmir is also like other UTs and states of.
There is, or perhaps there has been, a big transition from terror to transformation, and these elections in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir are mandated for a vote which is for development, and only development for New Kashmir, or the template of Naya Kashmir, post-abrogation of Article 370. With camera person Rahul Chopra, Sakal Bhatt reporting for DD India from Kashmir.
US President Joe Biden will host the 4th in-person Quad Leader Summit in his hometown, Wilmington, Delaware, on September 21st. The summit comes as Biden eyes his foreign policy legacy in his final months as a one-term president, after dropping out of the 2024 US elections and effectively handling the Democratic Party nomination to his Vice President Kamala Harris. White House spokesperson said The President is looking forward to welcoming Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Prime Minister Kishida Fumio of Japan. The Quad Leader Summit will focus on bolstering the strategic convergence on the Indo-Pacific and delivering concrete benefits in health, security, natural disaster response, maritime security, high-quality infrastructure, critical and emerging technology, climate and clean energy, and cybersecurity. The White House said that India will be hosting the next Quad Summit.
At the beginning of this administration, President Biden made the decision to take the Quad to the leader level, and next weekend, President Biden will host the 4th in-person Quad Leader Summit in Wilmington, Delaware. The President looks forward to welcoming Prime Minister of Australia, Prime Minister of India, and the Prime Minister of Japan. This will be President Biden's first time hosting foreign leaders in Wilmington as president, a reflection of his deep personal relationships with each of the Quad leaders and the importance of the Quad to all of our countries.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is in the United States for talks with US President Joe Biden on issues of mutual and global concern. The US President will host British Prime Minister at the White House on Friday. The leaders will have an in-depth discussion on a range of global issues of mutual interest, including continuing robust support to Ukraine, securing a hostage release and a ceasefire deal to end the Gaza conflict, protecting international shipping in the Red Sea from the Houthi threats, and advancing a free and open Indo-Pacific. Russia's Federal Security Service said that it has revoked accreditation of 6 British diplomats in Moscow on Friday as their action shows signs of spying and sabotage work. The Federal Security Service reported that a British Foreign Office department in London, overseeing Eastern Europe and Central Asia, was coordinating the escalation of the political and military situation. The department was also tasked with ensuring Russia's loss in its conflict against Ukraine. It added the facts revealed give grounds to consider the activities of British diplomats as threatening the security of Russian Federation. Meanwhile, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Russia's decision to expel 6 British diplomats over espionage concerns is not related to any efforts to sever diplomatic ties with London. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov stated on Friday that President Putin's suggestion to restrict Russia's metal exports is still under consideration, with no concrete measures in place. The proposal, which includes commodities like uranium, titanium and nickel, is a response to Western sanctions and not linked to Ukraine's use of Western long-range missiles. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Friday that he will present a victory plan to US President Joe Biden later this month, aimed at achieving a reliable peace in the ongoing Russian-Ukraine conflict. Speaking at the conference organized by Viktor Pinchuk Foundation, Zelensky emphasized that the plan is intended to fully implement his peace formula. Moving on, families and supporters of hostages still held in Gaza took to streets in Tel Aviv on Friday, demanding the government to put more efforts to secure a deal. On Friday, protesters blocked traffic from crossing while lighting flares and small fires in metal drums. Around 100 hostages remain in Gaza, at least a third of whom are believed dead. Over 100 hostages were released in return for Palestinian prisoners in November, and 8 have been rescued by Israeli forces. Spain on Friday hosted a meeting bringing together ministers from Muslim and European countries to push forward a 2-state solution for Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The gathering included members of the Arab Islamic Contact Group for Gaza, such as Egypt, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and Turkey. Earlier, the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez welcomed the attendees at his residence. The meeting aimed to bolster international engagement in Middle East peace efforts and build consensus around the 2-state solution. This follows Spain's recognition in May of a Palestinian state alongside Ireland and Norway. Germany and Lithuania signed a defense cooperation agreement in Berlin on Friday. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius said the deal is aimed at stationing up to 4,000 German troops on NATO's eastern flank in the Baltic country by 2027. Construction of the future German base began early this year. He also added that the cost is around 4 to 6 billion euros for investment into the brigade. The World Health Organization (WHO) has granted pre-qualification to Bavarian Nordic Mpox vaccine, marking the first WHO-approved vaccine aimed at curbing the spread of the disease, particularly in heavily impacted African regions. The approval enables developing countries, which often lack the infrastructure for extensive vaccine safety and efficacy assessments, to access the vaccine. Bavarian Nordic shot is cleared for immunization in adults aged 18 and older, offering protection against smallpox, Mpox and related orthopox virus infections. NASA astronauts Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmer will participate in a special press conference aboard the International Space Station on Friday at about 2:15 p.m. EDT. The conference will be held at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston. Williams and Wilmer launched on Boeing Starliner spacecraft on June 5th and arrived at the ISS on June 6th. The Starliner returned uncrewed to Earth on September 6th, landing safely at White Sands Space Harbor in New Mexico. Let's now turn to other stories making news around the world. Authorities evacuated villagers in a small town in the southwestern France after wildfire that started the previous afternoon continued burning. Firefighters had sustained minor injuries and brought to hospital for medical aid. Around hundreds of firefighters and 3 helicopters were still working in the area to contain the blazes. German authorities are demolishing the partially collapsed Carola Bridge of Dresden city due to heavy rains and flooding predictions in the next few days. A part of this bridge had collapsed earlier this week without any fatality and was blocking the river channel. Firefighters in Spain's Catalonia were working to control the blazes and protect Serra del Montsant Natural Park. The wildfire that started near the Tarragona previous evening had burned 70 hectares of land. Another wildfire at a different location had been brought under control. Water shortages in Cuba are escalating tensions, particularly in Havana, where many residents are already struggling with food, fuel and electricity shortages. Officials report that around 600,000 people, over 1 in 20 on the island, are affected by water supply issues. Havana is the hardest hit, with many of the country's largest cities also facing significant shortages. Still to come on this edition of DD India Live. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un visited a uranium enrichment facility, calling for advancing the country's nuclear arsenal. Minister of External Affairs Dr. S. Jaishankar interacts with the diaspora members in Geneva, says women-led development seeing a big push in India. South Africa's president signs contentious education legislation into law.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked, we just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India Live. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un visited a uranium enrichment facility, calling for development of new centrifuges to increase weapons-grade material production, further advancing the country's nuclear arsenal. Kim's visit to the Nuclear Weapons Institute offered a rare look inside North Korea's banned nuclear program. He emphasized the importance of expanding the arsenal for both self-defense and preemptive strikes, citing escalating threats from the US and its allies. Kim also oversaw the test of a new 600mm multiple-launch rocket system and guided a special forces drill. North Korea's nuclear weapons programs are banned by United Nations Security Council resolutions, but the country is believed to have several sites for enriching uranium. South Korea has strongly condemned North Korea over the uranium enrichment facility. Kim vows to boost his country's nuclear capability.
Yeah, we are tracking closely the detention of a U.S. military member in Venezuela. We are closely monitoring the situation, seeking additional information, and I don't have further comment at this time.
The U.S. State Department on Thursday imposed sanctions on supplies to Pakistan's ballistic missile program. The sanctions also include China-based firms. Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said in a statement, Beijing Research Institute of Automation for Machine Building Industry had worked with Pakistan to procure equipment for testing rocket motors for Shaheen-3 and Ababil systems and potentially for larger systems. The sanctions also targeted firms alongside Pakistan-based Innovative Equipment and Chinese National for knowingly transferring equipment under missile technology restrictions. Washington similarly targeted 3 China-based companies with sanctions in October of 2023 for supplying missile applicable to items to Pakistan. In Sri Lanka, postal voting for the 2024 presidential elections concluded on Thursday. Postal voting took place on the 4th, 5th and 6th September, and for the voters who were unable to cast their postal ballots on those dates, additional opportunities were provided on Wednesday and Thursday. Local media quoted the Department of Post saying that over 694,000 presidential postal ballot papers were received so far. Reports added that 95% of these ballots have already been dispatched to the district returning officers. The election is scheduled for 21st of this month to elect the 9th executive president. The elections, being the first one after the widespread protest that shook Sri Lanka in 2022, is being termed as a pivotal moment in the nation's political and economic history. The collapse, which witnessed an acute shortage of essentials, led to mass protest and former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to flee and resign as the 17 million voters gear up for the polls next Saturday. The election is expected to be highly contested and influential for Sri Lanka's future. So what are the key issues of the election? Let's take a look. IMF deal is a key area of discussion. Corruption, a major issue under the previous regimes. Ethnic issues for Tamil voters are also in focus in the elections in Sri Lanka. The implementation of the 13th Amendment is a major issue which oversees decentralization of power to provincial councils. And let's learn more from our correspondent in Sri Lanka, who's giving an insight on the presidential elections.
The presidential elections in Sri Lanka are being held at a very crucial phase in the island nation. From the peak of the economic crisis that we saw 2 years ago to now, inflation is down from 70% to under 5%, interest rates are reduced, and the forex reserves are up. But Sri Lanka is not yet completely out of the woods. The fragile condition of the economy exists even today. This economy, which relied primarily on tourism and apparel exports, it needs several measures to take the economy to sustainable levels. And this is where the challenge for the new government exists. The new government will have to manage to find ways to expand the GDP all the time with an eye on the debt that needs to be repaid from 2029. In fact, many have called this election a make or break moment when the people would choose who would be a better leader going forward.
Interacting with the Indian community in Geneva, India's Minister of External Affairs, Dr. S. Jaishankar, said, in India, women-led development is seeing a big push.
The cause of social justice, the idea of inclusive growth, of rule of law, is gaining ground and is today very central to the policies and activities of the government. And just as we honor Hansa Mehta, today in India, not just the idea of gender equality or gender justice, but the idea of women-led development. This was actually our big push when we had the G20 presidency last year. And we were very pleased to see that it was a strain of thinking that we were able to successfully inculcate into the international community.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa signed a controversial education bill into law on Friday, sparking backlash from his coalition partner. The legislation allows the Education Department to approve school boards' language policies aiming to prevent discrimination. The ANC, Ramaphosa's party, argues that the bill addresses exclusion based on language, particularly Afrikaans, which was used to enforce racial segregation under apartheid.
The signing of this bill marks an important step towards resolving long-standing challenges in our education system. It was President Nelson Mandela who said that it is not beyond our power to create a world in which all children have access to a good education.
In celebration of Chuseok 2024, which is the Thanksgiving celebration of the year, the Korean Culture Center India organized a special songpyeon making workshop in New Delhi. There's more.
Chuseok, one of Korea's most important seasonal customs, marks the end of the farming season and is traditionally celebrated with offerings of songpyeon made from fresh rice and seasonal fruits.
Chuseok is a harvest celebration much like the Indian festivals of Baisakhi or Pongal. One important part of the Chuseok tradition is making songpyeon with family members. It is a specialized cake similar to Indian gujia made during Holi.
Event to showcase our Chuseok custom. Usually during the Chuseok, in traditional way, we visit the grandparents' house and we make the Korea traditional food all together. Also, we visit the ancestral grave during the Chuseok. So during this time, we build a stronger relationship in the family members. So we want all the Indian participants feel this vibe and enjoy this event.
During the workshop, staff members of Korean Cultural Center India at New Delhi and Indian students got hands-on experience creating the iconic half-moon shaped songpyeon, which mirrors the preparation style of India's gunjia. The main difference lies in the cooking method. Songpyeon is steamed while gujia is fried.
From today's event, I learned more about the Korean culture. I got to know what Chuseok is, and I also tried to make songpyeon today. And it was very interesting. It was very similar to gujia.
Participants also engaged in traditional Korean games and learned about the rich history behind Chuseok, deepening the cultural exchange between Korea and India. Kriti Vadhera's report for DD India.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi hosted India's Paralympics contingent at his residence in New Delhi. The long interaction with all the athletes has moments of fun and introspection. The para-athletes shared their experiences with the Prime Minister, received gifts and advice. Here's how.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi hosted India's Paralympics contingent that returned from Paris 2024 with a rich medal haul boasting a total number of 29 medals that includes 7 gold, 9 silver and 13 bronze medals. During the interaction with the Indian contingent, the players shared their experiences, exchanged gifts and also enjoyed the moment to its fullest with the Prime Minister. Paralympics gold medalist Sumit Antil dedicated his gold medal to Prime Minister Modi and thanked him for his continuous words of encouragement.
मैं back to back second gold medal है सर मेरा. मेरे को भी याद है सर जब टोक्यो में गोल्ड लेके आए तो आपने प्रॉमिस लिया था कि ऐसे ऐसे 2 गोल्ड और चाहिए मेरे को. तो ये दूसरा सर आपके लिए है.
Navdeep Singh, who bagged gold in javelin throw, also shared his experience and said that when other players were winning medals, he got really nervous.
मैं F41 कैटेगरी में जेवलिन थ्रो करता हूं सर. दूसरी बार पैरालंपिक पार्टिसिपेट कर रहा हूं. जैसे ही मेडल आने शुरू हुए ना सर तो एक मन में घबराहट होनी शुरू हो गई थी कि सबके आ रहे, मेरा क्या होगा? तो सर, पर फिर भी सर, जैसे सीनियर एथलीट्स थे सर, जैसे सुमित भाई था, अजीत भाई साहब थे, संदीप भाई साहब थे, देवेंद्र सर थे, सबसे सर एक एक दिन मिलके सर एक्सपीरियंस गेन किया सर, कि आप कैसा फील करते हो, मेरे को क्या करना चाहिए, और सर एंड तक आते आते सर मैं बिल्कुल फ्री माइंड होके खेलने का।
वाह।
Sharad Kumar, who bagged a silver in men's high jump T63 category, said that all Paralympians always look forward to meeting the Prime Minister after the Games.
मैं एज एन एथलीट ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि जब से पैरा मूवमेंट स्टार्ट हुआ है, मैं तब से जुड़ा हुआ इससे, और आज जिस लेवल पे सारे एथलीट्स हैं, मुझे खुद प्राउड फीलिंग होता है इन सबको, जिस तरह सब जाते हैं, कोचेस, फिजियोथेरेपिस्ट, सब एक टीम, जब अब हम लोग बाहर जाते हैं तो इंडिया को अब ऐसे लोग देख रहे हैं कि ये, पहले सोचते थे ये आगे आ सकते हैं, लेकिन अब पैरा में इन्होंने कैटेगराइज कर दिया कि इंडिया एक स्पोर्टिंग नेशन ऑलरेडी है। आपसे मिलने और जाने से पहले आप जब सबसे बात करते हो और फिर आने के बाद सबसे मिलते हैं, आई थिंक सारे मेडलिस्ट, सारे एथलीट यही सोचते हैं कि हमें यही मौका मिले। सर, लोग पैरा को अभी तक अपनाए नहीं जिस तरह आपने अपनाया है।
During the freewheeling conversation with the athletes, Prime Minister also shared a key message and said that specially abled persons should be treated with utmost respect.
उनकी तरफ देखने का दृष्टिकोण बदले, वे उनके प्रति सम्मान के भाव से देखें, दया भाव से नहीं, वो हमें मंजूर नहीं है। दया भाव नहीं चाहिए, सम्मान से देखे, मैं तुमसे कम नहीं हूं, ये मिजाज मुझे देश में पैदा करना है।
All the athletes enjoyed this memorable visit to Prime Minister's residence, and to make it even more memorable, the players also shared some gifts with the Prime Minister as they take back home a bag full of memories and experiences with them. Sports Desk, DD India.
That's all for this edition of DD India Live. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live. Namaskar.